Frank, I understand you went back to the city of brotherly love. How was it, man?
Yeah, the city of brotherly something. Um, Overall, it was good. However, I was kind of taken aback by how my old neighborhood, Kensington, had fallen into disrepair since the 70s, when the art of Japanese management came about, super efficiencies. And while we were driving our big muscle cars, they were dominating the automobile industry with compact, fuel efficient cars. So a lot of manufacturing in that area left, which completely collapsed the community. So now it looks worse than I can describe. I'll just say that. Although I did have a good experience at the Navy Yard and visiting with our friends and family from the past, high school buddies, it was shocking to be at 7:30 in the morning walking down the sidewalk and stepping over bodies because of the xylazine epidemic. I'll share a screen here briefly and show you what I saw. Give me a second and I'll pull it up. So I was walking down the street near Girard Avenue and Front Street, and I saw this person laying positioned perfectly. So if a car was coming up the street this way, they could easily roll over and crush that person's head. That's not a beret in her hair, a barrette. That's a syringe stuck in her scalp.
Oh my God.
Yes. And so what I noticed was people, let me get this image. I noticed people just walking by. I walked by too. I thought, oh, I'm a tourist today. I don't want to get caught up in a 9/11 situation. Maybe she's dead and I'm disturbing a crime scene. I just didn't, it was just shocking. And as you can see, people have no choice but to walk by. And these are the streets of Philly, loaded with garbage. A fire truck did show up. And what they did is they lifted the young lady up, somebody's baby, and turned her around and said, keep walking. And that's it. They just, there's not enough resources to deal with the epidemic that's just hitting the news now. This is the poor child, could be my daughter, could be a friend. As you can tell by her hand, there's the beginning of opening flesh-eating bacterial wounds that are a product of the xylazine, which is laced into 90% of the street drugs in Philly, the epicenter, which is now in New York City, and is traces of it, or sometimes great quantities of it, as in Boulder, Colorado, recently have been found. I don't want to.
Let me ask you, Frank. I'm familiar with fentanyl, but not. What you say that again? Xylazine. Yeah.
Xylazine is an additive. It's made from, and I can't vouch for the validity of my research. I just recently delved into this research and I found some conflicting reports, but here's what I know so far. Allegedly, there's 5 different powders that are being manufactured in China, India, and elsewhere, and sold on the black market through the dark web. So this totally changes the whole concept of drug dealing, because anyone could buy these unregulated powders, although Congress is moving towards regulation now on this. So with a pill compression device in a hotel room, they could press out their, I've got to take this picture down. It's just,
Yes, yeah.
It's not serving me. At any rate, anyone could be a dealer. They could buy a kilo of this stuff for $6 to $20. And it's only a few grains that help to sustain the high or low, whatever you want to call it, of fentanyl. And more so what I saw out there was a mixed reaction from the community. There's the compassionate caretakers doing their ministry, their nursing ministry in the streets. And then there's the people without empathy who realize these junkies are victims, the ones that are sleeping in McPherson Square, the local park now called Needle Square. They're just messed up. You know, I had a kind of an non-empathetic friend say, well, they're stupid for sticking a needle in there. Of course, it's a bad decision, but they're not in their right mind.
Right.
If you know anything about homelessness, it doesn't matter if you've been homeless for a night, 3 nights, or a year. The trauma is there. You feel that umbilical cord cut off you're cut off from the world. You're not in your right mind. You're looking for escape. It used to be alcohol.
Right,
But
right.
now all the drugs, if you do some research on Philadelphia and fentanyl, and the problem too is, we're talking about senior adults, these pills look alike. Here's aspirin. I'll try to move it towards the camera. There's aspirin. And here's a fentanyl. It's aspirin with fentanyl.
Mm,
And there's no telling what's being laced into these drugs. It's now February, or pardon me, May 25th. I predict we'll see quite a rise in the press coverage because the numbers are staggering. The number of opiate deaths in the past 2 decades have multiplied 4 times for senior adults. And I know this is a concern for you, Jeff.
yeah, well, here in Kentucky, one of the things that I've been trying to raise awareness around is opioid addiction among older adults. In fact, there are studies that show that it's reached epidemic proportions throughout Appalachia, but we're not talking about it. And we're not talking about it because we think that drug addiction is a bastion of the young. But, my generation, we grew up in a drug culture. And so we're predisposed to use drugs. And many times if we go to a doctor and we have an ailment, the doctor misdiagnoses us because they don't think in terms of abuse of drugs or possible fentanyl usage. And yet the situations may be very similar in terms of conditions that either force the possibility of using drugs or not. But going back to that picture you showed, what a visual of that young lady in the street next to that pile of garbage. It's quite a metaphor because what it's saying is we live in a disposable society, and we have people we allow people to be disposable.
Another thing people don't know about homelessness is it's not your stereotypical voluntary poor alcoholic bum who just wants to live on the edge of society. It's anyone. It could be that nice kid who had a blow-up fight with the family 2 weeks ago, and now his or her personality 30 days later is totally changed and twisted.
Mm-hmm.
And I had an experience. I was at the local hospital here in Boulder, and a lady came in. I was going to say she's about 50-ish, in kind of a Doris Day dress. She looked very nice, and she had some fight with her husband. He locked her out, and she was actually on the streets without even her purse. And she had no idea where to go for social services or the safety net. She was in an absolute panic. Just, where do I sleep tonight? How do I stay safe? How do I eat? These are ongoing issues. This epidemic is killing over 200 people a day. The DEA has just recently released a public health warning about xylazine, lacing the various other drugs, meth, not just heroin and fentanyl, but meth and cocaine and even marijuana. Some young people are curious, right? You talk about our generation experimenting with drugs thanks to the Army inventing LSD. Right? But some young lady I saw on the news took a Percocet. She thought it was innocent enough. It was laced with this xylazine, and she died. And this is happening just like the violence is happening in our society, but not reported. So where do we go from here, Jeff? I'm just shocked. I'm still in a state of shock after 2 weeks of walking down the sidewalk, stepping over bodies.
Well, I can tell that it certainly affected and impacted you. What bothers me, I think, is the fact that there are too many people who just throw up their hands. What can we do? There's nothing we can do. You're someone who says, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen enough, and somebody has to do something about this.
Yes.
And when we look around and say who that somebody is, it's us.
It's the
It's
power
what,
of one. It's the power of one.
yes.
People, we're so used to the experts, them, they, but your voice counts. My voice counts. Every individual voice counts. This young lady in the street could be your daughter, could be my daughter.
Well, I think the
Could
first
be
thing
us.
is
It could be us. We bump our
yeah,
head and fall into chronic depression and make bad decisions.
sure. I think the first thing is to raise awareness that this particular new version of the drug is starting to accelerate and spread throughout the land. But that's, I think, is the first step, is to realize that we have a problem here before we can do anything about it. And here in Kentucky, I was able to help pass a resolution that addressed the fact that, or recognized the fact that we had a problem with opioids and fentanyl here in Kentucky and Appalachia. And that at least is a start. It's raising awareness that it does exist and we need to do something about it. And so we've at least begun the steps to address it and figure out ways that we can address it. But until you're willing to accept the fact that it exists, we're not going to do anything.
Jeff, I know you were helpful with these legislators to pass this resolution for Kentucky. I hope this conversation inspires other thought leaders in other states to model what you're doing and perhaps ally with you. How can people get a hold of you?
Well, they can reach me through the address below, which is jeff@wisdomofage.net. But I'm happy to speak to anyone that wants to take a stand on this. And I agree with you completely. It does begin with the power of one.
And to conclude, regarding the children, give me a second, I'll pull it up. By the way, the first UK death was just discovered a day ago in the UK. So it's going worldwide. 124,000 fentanyl pills seized in Boulder County just yesterday, along with many other hard drugs. There's a knowledge sheet on the DEA site. 90% of dope samples tested in Philly in 2021 were laced with this new drug, this xylazine animal tranquilizer. And most importantly, for you who are parents listening to this, the DEA has a code. They decoded the emoji drug code. So here are the emoji codes that are used on the dark web and through texting. So basically, order with cryptocurrency, totally invisible transaction, to buy Percocets, oxycodone, Xanax, Adderall. Here's the dealer's advertisement. Here's the potency. So this information is available, and we really do need to get ahead of the curve on this.
It's interesting. You live in Colorado, and you showed that example of the drug bust that just took place in Boulder. It's interesting that it happens everywhere. You live in a beautiful area in Colorado, and then you go back to Philadelphia and you see that, and you say, well, yes, inner city, it's happening there. It's happening everywhere.
It's everywhere. Yeah. Friends in Boulder are reporting seeing people bent over because of the muscular constriction due to the xylazine. It's tragic. Well, thanks for allowing this minute of conversation, Jeff, to talk about something that the conversation needs to be expanded, and we need to take action, because with the drug business, I know wherever there's big money, there's big corruption. So if we could take our eye off of the street problem, look towards treatment and containment, but more so go after the distributors. Interpol is on a search now to help restrict these ingredients, and the DEA, pardon me, is it drug enforcement? The FDA, DEA, Congress is about to regulate.
Yeah.
Label these ingredients.
Okay. Well, thank you, Frank. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. And hopefully more people will rise to the occasion to lend their voice to addressing this issue. So, thank you.
Thank you.